Today I'm going to do my best to explain all of the electrics in this property, and man, oh, some interesting electrics going on.
That's supposed to be a switch, you can't really tell.
What an absolute joke. This sort of thing really pays me off, to be honest. Hiya folks, welcome back. I did promise that I would kind of explain how all the electrics work in this property. If you remember when I first gave you the tour of this property, I showed you inside this kind of box thing over here. This has the main incomer in it and the consumer unit and a whole load of other stuff. So let me show you what it was like when we first moved in. And by the way, obviously only ever get like electricians to do this sort of stuff. You only look or touch or do anything with electrics if you're 100% competent with it. Electrics will quite happily kill you instantly.
So this is the electrics as it was when we first purchased the property, and as you can see it is a bit of a mess. Just to kind of explain what's going on here. So this is the main electric supply coming in at the bottom here. So this is your mains electric. It kind of comes under the floor here, and by what I could detect it was coming like vaguely in this direction, but we never really managed to find that cable. So it might go off this way, it might go off that way. I'm not entirely sure. We found the other end of it where it came into the kind of garage area, but here it became a bit of a mystery where it ran. Anyway, whatever, it comes up here. And then this is the main fuse provided by the electric board. So basically the electric board are responsible for everything up to this point here. And this basically has a 63 amp wire fuse in it. That then leads off this way into the electric meter. So here is the meter. It is a smart meter, but it's one of the older type, and well, frankly, it's awful. And then from the meter, it goes off to this couple of junction boxes here. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later, but basically from there, it goes from those junction boxes to the consumer unit. So there is the main supply coming into the consumer unit, which then feeds the rest of the house. Now, a couple of complications in all of this, because the property did have night storage heaters. So if you're not aware, in the UK, I don't think they're that popular anymore, but you used to get storage heaters. So basically big electric radiators filled with bricks, and they switch on at night during off-peak electricity. Awful things. They're really, really inefficient, and because they only heat up at night, it means that you've got very little control over the heat they give out through the day. So for example, you might have a really cold night where you want the heating to be on, but you might have a warm day where you don't want the heating to be on. Well, once the bricks and those storage heaters have heated up, there's very little that you can do to dissipate that heat. The heat's going to come out of them no matter what. Anyway, that's a whole different subject about storage heaters. But to make the storage heaters work, we have this little contraption here, but you'll see that's got a live. Brown in the UK is live, by the way, and red used to be live. For whatever reason, we've changed colours. Let us know in the comments what the colour standards are for your part of the world, because yeah, it's different everywhere. But in the UK, it used to be black and red, which made perfect sense to me. And for whatever reason, we switched over to blue and brown. But yeah. So anyway, so this switching unit here, provided by Eon, oh lordy, the problems that I've had with Eon, by the way, that's another whole separate video. Took me 8 months to switch away from them because I had so many problems. It was unbelievable. Never known a company like it. But anyway, so there's the night storage heater switch box that heads off all the way round to supply these kind of mini consumer unit fuse box things over here. So all of these old wire fuses were literally just for the storage heaters. And you can see from that there were 5 fuses, 5 storage heaters. By the way, all of the metal from the storage heaters went for recycling, and I kept all the bricks, the fire bricks out of them, and I'm currently using those for various projects in the garden, so it's all being recycled and reused. I did try to sell them, but no one wanted them. No huge surprise there. Anyway, separate to all that, the property did also have solar panels, and all of this stuff down the left hand side here is for the solar panels. So we had a separate meter here for the solar. We had the isolation switch for the solar here. That's supposed to be a switch, you can't really tell. And then that came down to a new little mini consumer unit down the bottom here, which just had an RCD in for the solar for whatever reason. I don't know why it had a separate RCD and an isolation switch, but you would think you could have both of those in the same box, but whatever, it had two separate ones. And then, if I remember rightly, the solar feed is these wires here. I think, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, it's all ripped out now obviously. So the solar feed is these wires here, and I'm not sure if this was it coming into the top of the, like just hitting onto the mains feed into the consumer unit so that it fed back through the back to the main supply basically to feed into the grid. I'm not sure if this was it coming in here or if it was coming in all the way around the bottom here and into these junction boxes. I can't remember. Could have been these cables coming down the bottom here. So in other words, those wires, let me just draw it in a different colour so this hopefully makes a little bit of sense. We'll draw it in green. So I think those wires, that they might have gone just behind the consumer unit, and then this is them kind of popping up the bottom here, if you can see, and then just going around and into the supply at the bottom there. Or as I say, it could have been coming in at the top into the consumer unit here. I honestly can't remember. Either way, the feed from the solar panels feeds back into the electric grid so that you can get your feed-in tariff and whatnot. Now, unfortunately, if you haven't seen on other videos, we had to get rid of the solar panels for various reasons. A, they weren't working, the inverter was broken and damaged, and it would have cost a lot of money to either get a new inverter or to get the one that we had fixed. Secondly, we had pigeons nesting under them, and it was an absolute nightmare of pigeon feces everywhere. It was really quite disgusting. We couldn't find any company who wanted to touch it, and we ended up having to basically take the solar panels out ourselves in order to clear all the pigeon mess and nests and everything like that from underneath them. They hadn't been installed particularly well, and at that point we were kind of weighing up the options of whether or not we should even keep the solar panels, because I do like the idea of keeping solar, but we had a look through some kind of past bills and things like that, and even with the feed-in tariff they were making like £5 a month or something like that. They were making so little money because where the property's located, there's like a tree in front of the property and various other things, and they just weren't getting enough sunlight. The roof's tiny. You know, if you've got a big roof with like plenty sunlight, at the end of the day, this is the northeast of England. You know, the northeast is actually quite a dry part of the UK, but it's not the sunniest part of the UK by any stretch of the imagination. So I really think on a small roof like this, they were fighting a losing battle. They probably got them installed at some point using some sort of government grant or something, but they would never have made back what the costs of what it would have cost to put the panels in the first place, and we would certainly never make back the costs of fixing the solar panels, taking them all down, clearing all the pigeon muck out, putting them all back, getting the inverter fixed. I mean, you're talking probably a couple of grand's worth of work there. We would maybe make that back over 10 years or something, but by then it would probably be time to replace everything anyway. So we made the decision to ditch the solar panels. I ended up actually just selling them on eBay, and someone bought the panels, and hopefully they'll get some good use out of them, and better than the sort of use that we were making. And the other thing as well, which was quite a major contributor in all of this, is that in the UK you used to have a thing called a feed-in tariff, and the feed-in tariff was basically a higher rate of payback than your standard electricity rate. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think, for example, if you would normally pay, I don't know, if you would normally pay 15 pence per kilowatt hour for your electric, through the feed-in tariff you could sell your solar electric back to the grid for like 30 pence per kilowatt hour or something like that. I don't know the figures off the top of my head. The point is that the feed-in tariff actually made solar panels vaguely worthwhile having, but unfortunately the government ditched the ability to transfer the feed-in tariff from one property owner to another, so we couldn't benefit from the feed-in tariff that the previous owner had, because the previous owner was now dead, and from everything that we looked into, there was no way of transferring over the feed-in tariff from basically a deceased person over to a new property owner, which is kind of insane, but doesn't surprise me in the current scheme of things. So yeah, for the sake of £5 a month that solar was making, it wasn't worth keeping. So basically everything down this side of the board needed to go. And obviously we also don't need this storage heater switch box and all the wiring associated with that, and we don't need all of this rubbish around the side. So let me just show you the actual consumer unit a little bit closer up as well. So briefly mentioned before, here's the power comes in over on the right here, and this consumer unit is wired in what's known as a split load configuration. So if you're not aware, split load basically means that we've got part of the consumer unit is RCD protected and part of it isn't. So this side, everything to the left of this line here, let me just mark that. So basically everything on this side is RCD protected by this RCD here, and everything on this side isn't RCD protected. And I think off the top of my head, electricians, please put down in the comments because you'll know way more about this than me, but when they started putting boards like this in, and obviously we had RCD protection with a little test button on, things like a light bulb blowing would cause the main RCD to trip and cause the electrics in the whole house to go off if a light bulb blew. So they would tend to keep lighting circuits on, and these are all the lighting circuits here. They would tend to keep the lighting circuits on the side of the board that had no RCD protection, or sometimes that side would have its own separate RCD as well. On this particular board we've got no RCD at all on this side, so effectively we've just got these things. So these are MCBs, miniature circuit breakers. They're really no more complicated than switched fuses. So you can see we've got 6 amp, 6 amp, 6 amp, and then over on the left hand side more MCBs over here. You know they're MCBs because they don't have a little test button on them, but we've got a 16, 16, 32, 32 and 32. So the 32 amp circuits will be for the ring main, so for sockets upstairs, sockets downstairs, God knows what else, I can't remember. And as I say, over on the right we've got 6 amps for the lighting circuits. We've also got this one here. Now this one is what's known as an RCBO, and you can tell it's an RCBO because it's got a little test button on it. RCBOs are great. They're basically, again, electricians, please post in the comments to confirm the rubbish that I'm talking. I am not an electrician, I'm just explaining my understanding of all of this. But an RCBO is kind of like an RCD, but just for a single circuit. So it's got the intelligence of an RCD where it can pick up problems beyond just a circuit being overloaded. So it can pick up things like earth leakage and stuff like that. So yeah, that there is an RCBO. Not sure what it's supplying. It's probably either the water heater. I mean, it's a beefy supply coming out of that, so 6 mil by the looks of it. So it looks like it's probably either the water heater or possibly the shower, or possibly the cooker. And it's all Wilex, by the way. It's a Wilex consumer unit. Wilex are generally alright, so no particular problems with the quality of the consumer unit, but the quality of the wiring within it is questionable at best. I mean, you can see this sort of thing, that's not great. And generally, there's so much redundant wiring in here anyway. The best thing that we could do is definitely to replace the consumer unit. And by the way, we were saying before about the solar, where the solar comes in. This is the solar coming in at the top here. So that is literally just, if you've followed those wires all the way through the switch, it's eventually making its way back onto the national grid, you know. So that's how the solar is getting out into the big bad world, because you can follow the wires. They're going kind of all the way around the back there, and that's them coming in on the left, blah blah blah. So that is the solar.
So we're a little bit further down the line now, and we've got electricians to strip out a lot of the stuff that's redundant, and let me show you where we are now. So first of all, ignore all of these wires and things here, because this is literally the only functional socket that I've got in what was the kitchen at the minute. So everything's kind of plugged in here at the minute. Don't judge. So as you can see, a lot of the redundant stuff is now stripped out, and we are currently waiting. Well, we've managed to get the main incomer changed over to 100 amp fuse over here, and I've been assured that the cables coming into the property are absolutely fine, very beefy, and will handle 100 amps no bother, which is great news. So this is all new and has been replaced. The smart meter, which is currently set up for economy 7, as I was saying before, so we've got the economy 7 smart meter and the heating contractor switch box for the old storage heaters. That needs to come out because it's redundant, and that will basically free up this whole left-hand side of the panel. We'll reroute these cables for the downstairs ring. We'll reroute those so that we can get a wall up this left-hand side here, because in the final plans, well, basically that's where the wall goes. So we will have to reroute some of the cables in there, but generally it's all looking a lot tidier. And once Eon have been out to remove their redundant rubbish, and hopefully we can, I don't know, we might be able to get them to remove these junction boxes as well, but I don't know. I'll see if I can sweet talk them into moving those along a little bit. This up here was old cooker supply. That ran all the way up this wall. You can kind of see where it's obviously been chased into the wall. I'm not quite sure what was going on here. All of this is going to have to come out because I want all redundant cables removed from the wall. I hate leaving redundant cables in the wall. All the stuff over this side, that was for the storage heaters, so that's all gone. But the route that cooker cable took was interesting. So it went all the way up the wall here into the bedroom in the floor above, which I'll show you very shortly. And it went through the bedroom ceiling all the way around here, and then it dropped through the cavity wall down here, and it popped out in here through the cavity. So that is, it's not a 100mm cavity, I'm not sure, 50mm maybe that we've got there. Anyway, so the main cooker supply dropped down there. We then had a lovely diagonal spur coming across here to a socket here, and yeah, so the socket that was kind of in this area, that was running off the cooker supply. So no wonder that socket wasn't working, because the cooker supply was disconnected. And yeah, that was a spur off which that's really dangerous, because a lot of people would switch off the main sockets to the kitchen and assume that that one was going to be switched off. But no, it was a diagonal spur off the cooker. Anyway, such is life. That's by far not the worst of it. If we come over here, do have to be a little bit careful, because these ones are live, but they're about to not be live because they're coming out. These shouldn't be live. Where's my detector gone? So this one should be live, because I'll show you where that's getting its supply from in a minute. It's unbelievable. But this should be dead, because this was just basically the kitchen sockets were a kind of glorified radial circuit spurred from the upstairs sockets, which is just brilliant. So this one here, as I say, so that's dead, and we know that that's dead, so that's safe to take out. So that went and came out the wall over here and then connected into a kitchen cupboard. That's what's left of the kitchen cupboard. That then spurred all the way over to this socket here. So that just leaves this one socket in the kitchen, and that must be just taking a direct supply straight from the consumer unit, which that's fine. We'll live with that for now. At least we'll have one functional socket, and that is working. So we'll leave that alone for the moment. But what I want you to focus on is this little live one here. So let's head upstairs. So this is clearly the handiwork of whoever fitted the bathroom storage heater that used to be here, and that takes a supply through the wall and popped out to a little fused spur here. So here is the cable for that storage heater. This should still be live, which indeed it is, because this ran under the floor. Oh, this is just beautiful. This ran under the floor to this lovely little nest of goodness hidden under the floor. That is a spur off this socket. So this is at least the ring, you know, so there's the ring in and out for that socket. But all they've done is they've spurred off that socket, they've shoved a connection block under the floor, and that wire there goes down to the kitchen to supply the kitchen sockets. So the kitchen sockets and the bathroom storage heater are all basically breaking out of this single spur from that bedroom socket through a dodgy connection block. That is absolutely shocking. So I'm going to turn the power off and we'll take this out. Just double check, that should now be dead, which it is, which is great news. So we should be able to pull this up through the cavity with any luck. Let's go for it. There it is. That is the kitchen supply. Wow, unbelievable. So we can take this spur out of this socket, just double check it all again. It's definitely dead. I'm kind of making the assumption that it is this one over on this side, which is all by its own. No, it's not. It's that one. Whew. There we go. Out. That was kitchen sockets and bathroom storage heater. You dodgy people. Reconnect all this and sort it out. Steal the brass nut out of you because I can't be bothered looking for the one I've just lost. This is all just temporary because it's all getting ripped out. So yeah, there you go. What an absolute joke. This sort of thing really pees me off, to be honest. This has been put in by a qualified electrician. It's all gone through building regs. It's all been signed off and approved. And that's the sort of thing that we're dealing with. It annoys me because it gives legitimate tradesmen a bad reputation, and that is absolutely diabolical. The good news is we've got a whole load more redundant cabling stripped out. Downstairs is looking pretty tidy, to be honest, cabling wise. There's only the ring down there really now. But at least now I can take out all this redundant cabling in the kitchen, and it just basically leaves the one socket over there, and that'll do for now. I need to get the heater plugged back in because it's Baltic in here.
So we're jumping forward in time now to show you this all more or less finished. I was hoping to show you all properly boxed in and painted and all looking pretty, but I just haven't had time to do that yet, and this video is causing a bit of a bottleneck for getting other videos out. So this is the best you're going to get for now. It will all be boxed in and it'll look genuinely beautiful once it's finished. So let me explain what we've ended up with. So we've got the new incomer at the bottom here, 80 amp fuse that's in it. It's not a 100 amp fuse. I don't know why it said 100 amp on it. I don't know if it's just 100 amp capable, but it's an 80 amp fuse. Either way, 80 amp is more than enough. And what we've also got the electric board to do is to put in a master switch unit as well. So this allows us to isolate the electrics, and this is really handy because it means that you can safely work on the consumer unit with the electrics completely isolated, which is kind of nice. New earthing block over here, but really there's very little to write home about earthing wise. It's a TNS system, so there's the earth coming in off the bottom there into the earthing block and then heading off into the consumer unit. Ignore the doorbell for now, it's not staying there, it's just temporarily there until we've built the wall that's going to come down, kind of the wall's going to come down like this bit here. Over on the right here, this big thick armoured cable coming along here. That is the supply to the studio room, so it basically goes up there and down into the consumer unit there. A few people commented about having structured cabling next to the electric cables. Trust me, I worked in data centres for many, many years, and if you think that's going to cause a problem, you want to see how cables are run in most data centres. It'll be absolutely fine. There's no packet loss, no errors in transmission, anything like that. The data cabling, structured cabling, at the end of the day, it's domestic use over a very short distance. If you were running really long lengths of structured cabling next to electric cables that were like really high current electric cables, then I would be maybe a bit more concerned. And if it was for business use, or it could cause major problems. And obviously, if you were installing it for a client, you wouldn't do this. But this is just for me. I don't give a damn. It's fine. It's not going to cause a problem. You don't need to worry about it. Anyway, so we've got a nice new RCBO consumer unit. Our electrician did a lovely job of wiring all this in. We've got new meter tails, we've got the studio supply coming in, and as I've briefly mentioned, it's RCBO. So RCBOs across the board, which means that we don't need a separate RCD, because each of these is effectively its own RCD, plus more, I think. I don't know, let us know in the comments. Do RCBOs do anything in addition to what an RCD would do? Either way, you've got your little test button per circuit, and it means you've got all your earth leakage detection and overcurrent protection and all that side of things as well. So all good. What have I forgotten to tell you about? I remember the big question, why didn't we just rewire the entire property? Well, okay, let me just explain that. This property has had, over the years, we've found evidence of 4 rewires. Now, I don't know if the property would have had mains electricity when it was first built in the mid-1920s. Newcastle was actually one of the first cities to have electric street lighting and that sort of thing, so it's very possible that it was around the time that mains electric was going into houses. Either way, the first or the earliest wiring that I could find in the property was old lead sheathed cabling. So that was either from when the house was first built or shortly after the house being first built in the 1930s or thereabouts. There was then also evidence of rubber sheathed cabling as well, and then 2 lots of PVC cabling. And by the looks of it, the most recent rewire was done probably within the last 20 years or so. Obviously before they changed the colour coding onto the new brown and blue colour coding, because it's all in red and black. But the cables are in perfect condition. There's nothing wrong with them. There's no green goo coming out of them. There's no deterioration at all. The cables are all run really nicely. The biggest problem has been all the additions over the years, such as the storage heaters and the kitchen electrics. And once all of that was stripped out, the remaining electrics in the property were in really good condition. And speaking to a couple of different electricians, they recommended just to leave it. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not a big fan of rewiring just for the sake of it. It's incredibly wasteful, providing you know that your current electrics are in good condition and they've all been tested properly and everything, then there's really no need for it. We checked all of the underfloor junction boxes to check all the terminals were still tight, which they were very tight, so there's definitely no risk of any terminals coming loose or anything like that. And we paid for a full inspection and test of everything, and it's all certified, all signed off, and we did that all when the new consumer unit went in. So we are very confident that we've got a really nice clean baseline to start off. Obviously it's easy to judge when you're not sitting in the driving seat of a renovation of work that you would and wouldn't have done, but there are always compromises, and doing a full rewire was really a stretch too far for this property and would have been completely pointless. As per usual, do not touch electrics if you're not competent to do so. My dad was an electrician and I've worked with electrics with him on jobs since I was about 8 years old. I'm also technically qualified as a studio engineer, and electrics was a portion of all the studying that you do as part of that. And even with over 30 years of dealing with electrics, I still get a qualified electrician to come in and check everything over, obviously do the work that only they are allowed to do, such as consumer units and new circuits. circuits. Having said all that, you need to have an electrician that you can trust, because I have seen work done in new builds, and you can see the work that was done in this property by qualified electricians, or so-called qualified electricians, that just brings the whole industry into disrepute. Anyway, just to really mess with your heads, we're going to jump back in time again, because I'd already recorded an outro for this video, so I might as well make use of it.
Don't forget to hit subscribe if you're new to the channel and you want to follow along with this renovation from scratch, and you can see it all the way from this kind of hellhole of everything being ripped out and there being no central heating and it being freezing cold while it's snowing outside. And hopefully one day we'll actually get this project finished and we can get moved in.
We certainly did get moved in, and that's a video that will be coming very soon onto the channel. First, I need to tell you all about the central heating, and that'll be the next video. Thanks again for watching. Take care, folks. Tatty bye.